Today's podcast is brought to you by Chikara Wrestle Factory, 4711 Wingate Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, specializing in lucha libre, porosu, European, British, and German styles, mixed martial arts, and American pro wrestling, all mixed into the curriculum at the Wrestle Factory, where they strive to create the most well-rounded performers active today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Fro Wrestling Podcast. We have plenty of things to get into in this episode, all the news and rumors of the day. Before we get started, for those who did not hear at our last podcast, we are starting a special contest right now with Fro Life Planning. My primary function outside of the podcasting world is I am an educator, I'm a career counselor, and I am a consultant to help people get their path to higher education. And starting this month, we're going to be offering one free 30-minute phone consultation to help you on your path, whatever it is, whether it's college, if it's another job, a new career, you want to just see what kind of continuing education opportunities are out there. I can help you do that, and a lot of times I can try to help you find money to make those kinds of things free. So what you need to do, there's no purchase necessary. If you want to enter for your chance to win this absolute free opportunity, follow these couple steps. First, go to the Fro Wrestling Podcast on the iTunes page. If you don't have iTunes, grab iTunes, you're going to need it. 2, at that point, you're going to get prompted to launch iTunes in your computer. Click the button that launches iTunes. Click the subscribe button under the Fro Wrestling Podcast. Click on the ratings and reviews, followed by clicking on write a review. I know some people don't like to do that if they have something critical to say. We need your feedback. Give us an honest review. When you're done giving us an honest review, click over to www.frolifeplanning.com/contest, and you can enter your email address for a chance to win our monthly phone consultation with Fro Educational Planning. It's something I'm really looking forward to being able to do for some people. I've had a lot of people inquire after hearing the way we wrap up our shows, and they say, well, what is that Fro Life Planning? Well, I want to make sure I get some opportunity out there for people to experience what it is that we do. So with that being said, I want to get into today's news. We have some things to talk about. First off, it seems like a running theme lately. We have some sad news, another passing of another wrestling star of yesteryear. For those who are fans of Stampede Wrestling, the promotion that was run by Bret Hart's father, Stu Hart, there was a wrestler by the name of Bruiser Bob Sweetan, and he passed away today at the age of 79. Back in the day, he was kind of a mainstay of that territory. There was a few others he worked at different times throughout his career, but primarily, I think his biggest success was Stampede Wrestling. Passed away at the age of 79. It's always hard to have to report on these situations. You don't wish bad ill will on anyone. It's so sad to see, especially in the last couple weeks, all these talents from yesteryear unfortunately passing away in a lot of respects too soon. Some of these people really had a lot to give back to the business. Ivan Koloff, who passed away last week, from my understanding, was wonderful at these different shows and WrestleCons, who would really go out there and take time for fans and stuff like that. You see those kinds of people, and it's just a shame that we've lost so many of them over the past few years. Moving on, trying to perk up to the more happy stuff, Terry Funk had an interview this week. It was reported on WrestleZone, where they talked about today's wrestling and whether or not he watches, which, to be honest with you, if you read the transcript of what he said in this interview, I still don't know if he watches or not. He had a whole thing about how, of course, he watches, but he loves it so much he can't watch it, and this and that. And I'm still confused. I'm not sure if Terry Funk actually watches the product or not, but he was very complimentary about the great athletes that are in the business today, something that he's really impressed with. And the reality is, if you think about the talent today versus what you would see if you looked at wrestling back in like the 1980s, even before that in the 70s, the conditioning, the body makeup, it's totally different. You know, if you could look at jobbers from like 1985, and I'll be referencing some of them later for a little tidbit of what's to come. You could look at jobbers from back in the 80s, and they just were these out-of-shape guys who showed up to work and got squashed by somebody and got a quick paycheck. Nowadays, even a lot of the jobbers are really well put together. They're very athletic, with the exception maybe of James Ellsworth. Most of these guys look relatively fit. So he was very complimentary about the athleticism. And then the thing that I really loved about his interview, he talked about the part-time wrestlers, and he didn't call them part-timers. He called them fresh-timers and made reference to the fact that these are the people who bring a fresh perspective to the product. He's like, who doesn't know Goldberg? Who doesn't know Brock Lesnar? Who wouldn't want to see these two get into the ring together and things like that? So it was a really interesting reflection on what's going on now and getting the perspective of someone who is so well regarded in the industry. So I really appreciate that. He did also have a little little tidbit on Paul Heyman. One of the quotes from his interview, he says, he could find guys who were great, but he could also pull guys out of a hat and make them successful. He has a great mind for the world of professional wrestling. And despite all the things people talk about when ECW folded and Paul Heyman's inability to properly manage money, that's a side thing that has nothing to do with his ability to book wrestling. When it comes to actually booking, Paul Heyman really is one of the most fantastic minds in the history of the sport. There was also an interview this week with Jake Roberts on the Bischoff on Wrestling podcast. And one of the things that really caught my attention, there was a conversation over in the 1990s when Jake Roberts was still in the WWF. He was actually reaching like a climax of his character, and he was under the impression that at some point Pat Patterson and a young man named Terry Garvin, who, for people who are fans of the old GWF, the Global Wrestling Federation, Terry Garvin starred on that program for quite a while, but those two people were running the creative side of things for the World Wrestling Federation at the time. And he was under the impression that if something happened and those two were to step down or leave for some reason, that he would be the next one in line to start running the creative process. And he indicated that at some point there was some backstage shenanigans going on and some shifting of the guard, so to speak. And that when that happened, Terry Garvin had gotten fired and Pat Patterson had stepped down. So immediately he thought, well, this must be my opportunity. And he cited in this interview that he went to Vince and said, I guess it's my time. And Vince replied with something to the effect of, that's not the way it really is. And that Jake, in that moment, finally realized that Vince was really giving him the shaft again. And I forget how he put it, and I try to keep it PG on this podcast, but he really... we would have finally had an opportunity to see just how creative Jake Roberts really is, because I don't think in the history of our business we've ever gotten to see what his mind can do. People talk endlessly about Dusty Rhodes, Paul Heyman, people who knew how to book, and I think that a lot of times when you look at like the Jake Roberts DVD that WWE put out a few years back, even people like Jim Ross talk about how Jake Roberts had such a crazy mind for the business, but the reality is he never really got the chance to showcase that on a grand stage. So you gotta wonder, back in say 91, 92, right when the whole WrestleMania angle where he loses to The Undertaker early in the show and leaves the WWF, goes to WCW, where his dad was booking, but his dad was out of there by the time he became established there, and they cut his contract, and I could keep talking I'll give away the whole DVD that they did. But the reality is he got a real bad deal when he got to WCW, and had he been given the opportunity to work the creative side of WWF as he claims he was offered, then you have to wonder how things may be different for Jake Roberts and how he may be reflecting on his career in a very different way. So very cool piece coming out of that interview on the Bischoff podcast. And keeping with that theme, Bill Apter had an interview this week with Dory Funk Jr. Dory Funk Jr., for those who have never seen a match of his, he had the longest reign with the NWA World Championship. I think it's over 1,500 days, which, in the grand scheme of things, people always think about Bruno Sammartino being a living legend because he held the title for so long. But in the National Wrestling Alliance, there was a larger conglomerate of corporations that all pulled for and voted for and determined who their world champion was going to be, and it, in some ways, would make it harder to retain the championship for a wrestler. So for him to have held it that long is really quite impressive. Whereas with Vince McMahon Sr.'s WWF and Bruno Sammartino being champion, you're really only having to deal with one guy, Vince Sr., determining who he wanted to be his champion. So a little easier to stay champion when you only got to make one guy happy and you're selling out the garden every month. Whereas when you go to the NWA, you got to sell out everywhere to stay as champion. And Dory Funk Jr. was able to do that. But in this interview, they asked him who would have made a great NWA champion. And for those who have never thought about the NWA championship, the NWA championship was different than many other championships around the world until maybe nowadays with some of the companies that tour all over. But back in the day, if you were NWA champion, you were wrestling 350, 360 days a year. You were wrestling twice on Saturday, twice on Sunday, like Ric Flair always says. That really was the deal. You were wrestling 400 matches a year sometimes. And the reality is that you had to be on your game no matter who you were in the ring with. People like Ric Flair, Harley Race, they were able to pull out the best out of their competition in any town they went to and make whatever company they were working for in that particular moment, make their top star look like he could be world champion at any time, hit one finishing move and take the title from Ric Flair or whatever. And to have that kind of power and that feel coming from Dory Funk Jr.'s recommendation. He said that he believes that it would have been Triple H. And I know there's a lot of people who are really hypercritical of Triple H for one reason or another. There's a whole nother group of people who appreciate Triple H's ability to be really on the cutting edge of wrestling right now, creating NXT as his baby and really fostering this brand extension. But the reality is, when you think about Triple H as a performer, you can't look back at his career and see a whole lot of situations where he didn't put on one of the best matches on the show. We had a conversation last week about wrestlers have their move sequences and the things that they do in every match, and some people complain about that and some people love that, but the reality is he always put on a great show. Even Hulk Hogan, in his own documentary for WWE a couple years back, made reference to wanting to work with Triple H, telling his son Nick that he wanted to get in the ring with him. He wants to have a match with him because his timing was impeccable, I think is the way he put it. And it's impressive to hear somebody like Hulk Hogan say that then and hear Dory Funk say this now. It really is a testament to Triple H's ability. Other WWE news, Kelly Kelly has announced that she officially will be at WrestleMania, but she does not believe she'll be wrestling, which has led to some speculation. She may be involved in the Hall of Fame ceremony. There may be some mystery person being inducted. We'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. But anytime that they get the ability to bring a star like her back to the company, even if it is for that one-off spot appearance, you know you're going to pop the crowd a little bit because they haven't seen you in so long. So good thing for her, seeing her come back to WWE TV, where it all started for her. The WWE UK talents from the United Kingdom Championship Tournament are going to be taking part in the next WWE UK tour. So the main roster will be on the tour, but they will also be supplemented by the guys from the tournament. So on the May 4th show, they're going to be in Glasgow, Scotland. And when they go there, WWE UK Champion Tyler Bate will be there. Trent Seven and Wolfgang, the three of them will team up to go against Pete Dunne, T-Bone, and Connors. On the May 11th show in Sheffield, they're going to have WWE UK Champion Tyler Bate, Trent Seven, and Gradwell go against Pete Dunne, Connors, and Drake. And then on the May 12th show in Newcastle, again, Tyler Bate, Trent Seven, and this time Huxley are going to go against Pete Dunne, Connors, and Drake. So an opportunity for them to get some backstage experience touring with the main roster, as well as their ability to get some exposure on the bigger shows, the bigger house shows. Speaking of big shows, the Big Show is in the news today talking about how he thinks Shaq is trying to get out of their scheduled match at WrestleMania. Now, I don't actually buy that. I don't think Shaq's trying to get out of anything. What I think personally is that the booking in WWE or Vince himself, I'm not sure which one it is, but somebody is souring on the idea. And that's somewhat frustrating because this is a couple years in the making. And there's not a lot of matches that you can get me up for with the Big Show. It worked this past week on Raw. I really wanted to see the match with Braun Strowman, and I thought the match went phenomenally well. But that match is all the more reason why I'd really like to see this match with Shaquille O'Neal. So I really hope they work this out and make it happen. But if not, you have to wonder what the real reason that this isn't going to go down is. Is it really Shaq backing out of this proposed deal? Or is this something where the booking committee and Vince McMahon have just soured on another idea before it got any legs and got taken off? In other WWE news, expect some roster trades after WrestleMania. Various news outlets, Cage Side Seats, Bleacher Report, WrestleZone, all talking about how you can expect to see some people on the move after WrestleMania. There was even one, and I don't remember which publication it was. One of them was talking about how they think Cena will move to Raw and that Brock Lesnar will move to SmackDown. I don't know what sense that makes. They're both part-timers and don't contribute enough as it is. But I'd be more interested to see AJ Styles moving to Raw and Roman Reigns moving to SmackDown. Again, we'll have to see how that shakes out. I think all of us kind of expect something like that to happen, but we'll have to wait and see how they plot this thing out. The NXT news. The other night when we had episode 26, we had to go off the air before the end of the taping at Full Sail University. That is a shame because the ending of the taping was amazing. Bobby Roode defeated Cassius Ohno, real clean finish to retain the NXT Championship. And the main event of the night saw Shinsuke Nakamura defeat TJ Perkins, which in and of itself is a great match. And we're all happy to see Nakamura is healthy and ready to go. But the real exciting part was after the match, Nakamura gets jumped by Bobby Roode. I almost said Rick Rude. Can you tell where my head's at? I mean, it's Hall of Fame season time and I'm really pulling for Rick Rude. But Bobby Roode enters the ring, goes after Nakamura and says how he has friends. And out comes Andrade Cien Almas. He comes out and the two of them are going after Nakamura. They're taking him down. And then You hit the lights, and here comes Finn Balor making the save on Shinsuke Nakamura. Finn Balor is not cleared to compete right now, but he got into the ring, threw a few kicks, few quick shots, hit a drop kick. It was enough to build that excitement. Like, we've been waiting so long to see this guy again. I don't know about you guys, but last year in 2016, I don't know if there was any entrance to any of the pay-per-views or matches, with the exception of the 3 legends coming out at WrestleMania, which was the highlight of the year for me. But outside of that, I think the entrance by Finn Balor, when he made his debut at his first pay-per-view on the main roster at SummerSlam, I mean, that was just one of those time stand still moments. And I'm really excited to see what will happen. I hope he makes it to WrestleMania and gets an actual match. I don't want to see some stupid thing where he comes out and does the microphone thing for 30 seconds. We've been waiting for Finn Balor. We want to see him wrestle. I want to see the Demon King walk to the ring and put on the full show with the paint and everything in that huge spectacle that is WrestleMania. We're going to have to wait and see if that happens. We're getting low on time for them to put him into a situation where he could be booked into a major program, but I'll take any program at this point, to be perfectly honest with you. Shifting gears a little bit, we're going to go to TNA. TNA Creative. They announced who is on the creative team right now, and it comes down to it's going to be overseen by Jeff Jarrett. It's going to have people on there some people have heard of and some people are going to be surprised. You have Scott D'Amore, Dutch Mantel, Jeremy Borash, which most people knew those 3 were on the booking team, but also Abyss and Rockstar Spud. That is your booking team for TNA. So if their programming is to your liking in the next several months, that's who you have to thank, those people there. In other TNA news, Bobby Lashley, it's not really a TNA news, but Bobby Lashley had an interview this week where he talked about 2 important issues. One, wanting to fight Brock Lesnar, but being convinced that that's just not going to happen. Brock's done with fighting. He talked about how WWE's taken really good care of Brock, and he really doesn't have a reason to fight. And I couldn't agree with him more, except for the fact that would be one of those cage MMA fights that I really would give anything in the world to see. It's almost akin to, one of these Undertaker's Cena matches for me in professional wrestling. I would really like to see that. But at the end of the day, the other interesting tidbit was he talked about his desire to fight Fedor. Fedor Emelianenko is a legend in the mixed martial arts world. He was supposed to fight against Matt Mitrione this past weekend. Didn't happen because of an injury. So Fedor's kind of in waiting mode with Bellator, waiting for Mitrione to get better. I'm sure that match is going to happen anyways, but once that match is over, Bobby Lashley wants to fight Fedor, and I think that would make for a great match. This old school Russian brute, mixed martial arts force going against this younger lion who's really hungry to make a big splash in Bellator. These are the kinds of attraction matches that make Bellator a little different than UFC. Some independent news, Evolve 78 is taking place tonight as we speak. If you are a subscriber and can get their pay-per-views, their shows through their network and whatnot, tonight Drew Galloway takes on Jeff Cobb, who's also Montanza Cueto and Lucha Underground. We got Keith Lee against Zack Sabre Jr., Fred Yee against Timothy Thatcher for the Evolve title. So if you get a chance, by all means, check out Evolve 78. But if not, get yourself ready for the next set of opportunities to see their talent. And what I'm talking about is over WrestleMania weekend, Fro Slam, which is the parent company who runs various different shows, has 8 different events that they've announced already for that weekend. So while WrestleMania weekend's taking place, Evolve 80 will take place. It's going to feature Donovan Dijak and Matt Riddle and Michael Elgin, Drew Galloway, Timothy Thatcher, who's the Evolve champion. That'll all be at Evolve 80. Then GCW is also going to be promoted by Fro Slam. They're going to have a show called Joey Janela's Spring Break with Sami Callihan, Eddie Kingston, and Leo Rush. The next day, Evolve 81 is going to be headlined by Michael Elgin against Zack Sabre Jr. You're going to have Kaiju Big Battle Civil War, which is a unique Asian, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just a different version of wrestling with their big star is Su Yung. So stay tuned for more information about that. If you want to go to Fro Slam's webpage to get more information. WWN Mercury Rising Progress versus Evolve will take place. It's going to have Jason Kincaid, Zack Sabre Jr., a ton of talents that I've already mentioned. A lot of these shows have a lot of the similar talent showing up at the shows. The Drew Galloways are showing up everywhere, and the Zack Sabres, and so there's a lot of repetition as far as talent, but in different configurations. So if you like the style of wrestling you see from a Zack Sabre Jr., in that weekend, 2 or 3 shows, you can see him going against different people, totally different styles of matches. At that pay-per-view, the WWN Championship will be featured. There'll be an elimination match with 8 guys, including Drew Galloway. The same day, the Beyond Caffeine show is going to feature Donovan Dijak against Matt Riddle in their main event. ACW has the Broken Tailgate Party, as well as FIP's Broken Tailgate Party, which is going to star AR Fox and Sami Callihan. Shimmer 91 will take place the same weekend. You can get that one on iPay-per-view. And then if you want to check out a different company that's not being promoted right now by FloSlam, go to the Demand Progress webpage or the Chikaratopia website to get Progress Wrestling or Chikara's on-demand services, so you can check out their shows that they're going to be running WrestleMania weekend. They haven't announced all the details yet of what their shows are going to be, but you know they're going to have something. That's the weekend when every independent in the world seems to come out with something very interesting to make sure they capitalize on the traffic of WrestleMania. A big announcement came out yesterday that May 7th, Welterweight Wrestling is going to launch, which is a new promotion. It's going to focus on talents that are 185 pounds and under. And if you want to get an idea what their production value and what their wrestling style is going to be like, you can do a YouTube search for Ace Perry versus Kevin Bennett versus Gavin Glass versus Sonny Vice. It's a fatal 4-way style of match where these guys are a little bit smaller, like cruiserweights, and this entire promotion is going to be based on that. So check that out. You have an opportunity. We have a chance to see something a little different. I want to get to our This Day in Pro Wrestling History. We have a couple things for this segment. 26 years ago, WCW Wrestle War 91 took place. The main event, I will never forget because the ending was just, for me as a kid, was horrific. Saw Barry Windham, Ric Flair, Sid Vicious, and Larry Zbyszko enter War Games against Sting's team of Sting, Brian Pillman, and Rick and Scott, the Steiner brothers. And I just remember at the end of the match, there's a spot where Sid Vicious picks up Brian Pillman to hit him with a power bomb, but Brian Pillman's feet get stuck on the top of the cage as he goes to deliver a move, and he pretty much sandwiches him in half. I don't even know how he survived the power bomb, and they actually ended up having to stop the match. And I don't know if they were supposed to win. I think Sting's team was probably supposed to win, but there was such a severe injury to Brian Pillman that they just stopped the match. It was a very awkward looking finish. Some people looked really dazed and confused when it took place. 22 years ago, Dan the Beast Severn beat Chris Candido for the NWA Championship. I talked earlier about Dory Funk Jr.'s long championship reign. The closest person to catching him was Dan the Beast Severn. When he won the championship beating Chris Candido, he held it for the better part of over 4 years. So another huge title reign with the NWA Championship, except in this case, the NWA was nowhere near what it was back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. 20 years ago today, huge day, ECW invaded Raw at the Manhattan Center in New York City. You saw people like Tommy Dreamer, the Eliminators, all these talents, Taz, Sabu, they all showed up, Stevie Richards, the Blue Meanie, and it was the first time we got to see ECW talent on WWE programming, which led to, as many of you know, a huge working arrangement with them. WWE ended up putting ECW on the payroll and really tapped into their talent pool in subsequent years, where they brought people like the Dudleys and Taz to WWE. 3 years ago today, speaking of really important dates, 3 years ago today marks the launch of the WWE Network that you right now can subscribe to for $9.99 a month. Lord knows I have my subscription. It's how I watch all my pay-per-views. But at the end of the day, big days in pro wrestling history. I want to address one comment from episode 27. Kalen Worthington, one of my most loyal followers, put up that in his fantasy book tournament, remember we had the big man tournament, his final came down to Yokozuna versus Vader, and he had Yokozuna winning. He referenced how when he was a child he used to do the bonsai drop off the couch. I can appreciate that. I can remember doing flying elbows off my couch because I loved Randy Savage so much. My only question, Kalen, is who the heck beat Andre the Giant? Because I'm telling you right now, if I was booking that thing, my finals would have been Andre the Giant against the Big Show, and I'd have had Andre win, but I would have had some amicable end to the match, kind of like a passing of the guard from Andre to the Big Show. But I appreciate everybody's feedback on those. If you got any other of those fantasy booking things from previous episodes, you want to put them on in the comment section still, I will definitely address those. I can. Today's look back match on YouTube, I have a little bit of a theme to this one. Look up Mankind versus the British Bulldog. which I'm going to tell you now, I'll let you know ahead of time, it is probably the worst video quality I have ever seen for a pro wrestling match. However, it's interesting because it's not a WWE show. It's some backwoods, who knows who they are company with the two of these guys going at it, and Vader makes an appearance. And what's bizarre is one of them's tag team champion in WWE at the time. I guess they were just doing a spot independent show at some club somewhere, and these guys get in the ring and have kind of a really strange match. Horrible video quality, like I said, but if you want to check it out, go for it. It's about 8 minutes long. But then if you want just a little bit more of the backstory on this intense feud between Mankind and the British Bulldog, you can also do a YouTube search for the British Bulldogs versus Mick Foley. And the reason you do that search is you will pull up the match that he referenced in his book, Have a Nice Day, where he was then known as Jack Foley. You'll get to see Mick Foley when he was actually relatively skinny, and he watched the British Bulldogs just beat the snot out of him. Who would know that about 15 years later he'd be wrestling the British Bulldog in this horrible video quality match? But if you want to get a look at Mick Foley when he was just starting out, go ahead and check that match out. Our fantasy booking for this episode, provided WWE decides to book this whole Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton versus Luke Harper triple threat thing, in the comments below on YouTube, please give me some feedback. Which superstar do you book to walk out of WrestleMania as WWE champion in that triple threat match? Let me know what you think, and can you try to give me some explanation? Don't just throw out a name out there. Give me why. Why do you want to book Bray Wyatt to stay the champ? Why do you want to put the belt on Randy Orton? Do you want to elevate Luke Harper? Totally up to you. I have no problem no matter who you choose, but give me a why so I can add some substance to my understanding of your perspective, and maybe you'll open my eyes to something. And I'm not going to tell you who I'd pick because I'm going to save that for the next episode. Today's YouTube fan poll is a new thing we want to try to do. We want to have a YouTube fan poll. Which current championship belt has the best overall design? And I want to limit your responses to WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, Lucha Underground, and New Japan Pro Wrestling, the 5 big ones. There are other huge promotions, CMLL, AAA, stuff like that, but this I want to limit to those 5. If you get an opportunity, please give us a review, give us a subscribe. We would love to have you be a regular visitor to this podcast. Through your efforts and your sharing, we have grown substantially, and I can't tell you people how much I appreciate that. Thank you to all of our loyal listeners. It's pretty much all the time I have for this episode, but check back with us in episode 29. Take a look at all the happenings on Raw and SmackDown if we get to that point. If we have a whole lot of news before then, maybe we'll throw out another episode just in between, just to keep you guys satisfied. Special thanks to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com as always for producing our music and sound effects, and to alleyrepair.com for servicing of all your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade needs. Contact alleyrepair.com today. We want to thank you for taking a moment with our podcast today. We encourage you to go to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com to learn more about what Mr. Fro can do for you. Remember, Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro, and I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us. I say it all the time. We look forward to talking to you people more about the current events, the rumors, and everything going on in the professional wrestling world. So feel free to check back with us next episode, and please don't forget, give us a subscribe.